when Quake 1 came out, it wasn't this crazy ultra competitive game. Initially, that is, right? Eventually, over time, through iteration and modding and all that, it became a game that a lot of people like to really play competitively, right? And so initially, Quake was more about just hopping on, fragging out for maybe like, what, an hour, 2 hours a day? I think it would be very rare to see, especially back in the 90s, people being on Quake for 8 hours a day. And we have historical proof of this, especially when it comes to competitive play. For Quake 2, a lot of players back then complained that some of the top players were playing more than what other players could play. Machiavelli, know him, great guy. I respect him a lot. I remember he used to complain that players would just have more playtime than him, and so that's why they were better.
Vote now.
I don't remember what documentary it was. There was a documentary where he's quoted on that. I think it was in regards to Fatality, maybe? I don't remember who it was. But you could see over time that the competitive nature of Quake is what took the forefront, probably around Quake 3, I'd like to say. And even then, vanilla Quake 3 was awful for competitive play. You can talk to anyone and they would tell you that OSP, it took time to develop that. It took like, what, a year to really get a good version that the community really liked for OSP. And so it's like, a lot of people just don't realize that the legacy of Quake has never been in its competitive players. It's always been with unique weapons, with casual play, with just a fun deathmatch, team deathmatch experience. The way I see it now is the only reason Quake has this stigma of being this really hard game right now is because the greater community, which, mind you, 99% of players do not play competitively in this game, but they like to make it out like this is a really competitive, ultra hardcore game, when in reality it's not. It's only that way if you take it that way. But if you're just playing deathmatch and team deathmatch and you're not entering tournaments or anything, then you can't call yourself a competitive player, and you can't give the title to a game as competitive. You have to be a part of that to understand that and to be able to label something as such. Not to mention that calling something competitive is already just so incredibly vague. Like, what does that even mean? No one can tell you that. That's like, the only thing I can think of that would come to like a quote-unquote competitive nature would be fairness. But even then, some of the top games aren't fair. And these are top esports, like Counter-Strike, right? Counter-Strike is one-sided for most of its balancing. And it's like, is that not a competitive game? Somehow Quake is more competitive than Counter-Strike, but what's the bigger esport here? So that's just my sort of thoughts on it. No matter which way you look at it, no matter what logic you use, no matter any argument, it'll always come back to like, oh, well, Quake's just harder. And it's like, okay, if you believe Quake is harder, you can think that. But don't force that ideology on the casual players, on the competitive players even, right? Like, being called the Quake vet is it's meme status at this point. Because it's like, when you label yourself as a Quake vet, you're pretty much just telling everyone that, oh, you've only played deathmatch and team deathmatch. These people that glorify Quake as this just ultra competitive game, it's like, they've never competed. So how can they say that, you know? How can they say that?